I feel like my life has never demonstrated hypocrisy so well. It's not actually a new thing. Every Sunday, I talk about wearing masks, and then I get up front and I take mine off. Now, there are reasons, and we take care, but still, I feel the inconsistency. And it's not just here. I always wear a mask in some places, and then in other places, I don't. I can give you reasons, but honestly, some of them are just dumb. I will avoid places, insisting I don't want to be in crowds, and then I'll go to others simply because it's somewhere I want to go. I am a walking contradiction, and I don't think I'm alone. This is what makes this stage of the pandemic so difficult. Without pandemic public health measures in place, it's over on paper. But it's not over, is it? Although we wish that by saying so we could make it so. People all around us are sick with it and sick of it. Things have evolved, thankfully. So the percentage of severe outcomes is dramatically reduced, but still, we make our own choices, and left to our own devices, we live as a mass of contradictions. It's interesting to arrive at Palm Sunday in such a space, because Palm Sunday itself is a mass of contradictions. There is this air of celebration among Jesus' followers. It's an enthusiasm that will not be controlled. When the religious leaders tell Jesus to quiet the crowd and stop drawing attention, he replies, well, we can try, but the enthusiasm is infectious. It will find a way to keep going no matter what we do. And doesn't that metaphor mean more than it used to? I tell you, says Jesus, if we tell them to be quiet, the very stones are going to shout. And in that conversation about the enthusiasm and the energy and the excitement is also an admission that they know that they are treading on shaky ground, maybe even dangerous. You don't really announce yourself with a parade and then expect to be incognito or go unnoticed. But you also don't stop what you're doing, that if it matters to you, just because someone else might not like it. And because we know what comes next in this story, the whole parade has this air of irony about it. So confusion and contradictions are the order of the day, just like our world now. Some people call these moments liminal. It comes from the Latin word limen, which means threshold. To be in liminal space means to be on the precipice of something new, but not quite there yet. You can be in liminal space physically or emotionally or metaphorically. Being in liminal space can be mostly incredibly uncomfortable for most people. Suzanne Stabile calls it living betwixt and between. She says, we don't like it when the world around us seems out of control. But let's face it, control is an illusion. It's my favorite illusion, but that doesn't make it real. And she goes on to note that nothing new happens as long as we are inside our self-constructed comfort zones. Nothing creative comes from business as usual. But every liminal moment is full of potential, if we have the desire and the courage to walk towards it. Now she, and probably me, would argue that the Enneagram is an extraordinarily helpful tool to help us do that. because everybody responds to the discomfort and stress of a liminal time according to their personalities, and often with unfortunate results. If we are risk takers by nature, we are anxious to move forward to a future of our own making. The moves are often hasty, and they lack pieces of the past that have value and wisdom. Think Judas, think Simon Peter, who are about to make quite unfortunate choices, hoping to rush Jesus into decisive action in Jerusalem, which instead causes Jesus to feel completely betrayed by them, both of them in different ways. If we are risk averse, we don't like risk so much, like those religious leaders who are just trying to keep Jesus quiet, our nature is to go back to the way things used to be, unaware that there is no such place, and that we will have to find the comfort we seek somewhere along the path that lies before us and not behind us. For those of us who are present to but confused about what could be accomplished while on the threshold, like those followers at the parade, doing whatever is right in front of us alleviates our cares and our woes, but only momentarily. That parade must have seemed exciting and even fun, but as we know, that crowd's loyalty would prove to be fickle. In our own liminal time, we know how we have acted, whether we are risk-averse or risk-tolerant or present to the threshold but having no idea what to do with it. Are you one of those risk takers who have rushed headlong without really taking time to think? Are you one who's been keeping your head down until things can just get back to normal? Have you been trying to get things back to the way they used to be? Or are you in that reactive space of simply responding to whatever is in front of you in any given moment without a sense of the bigger picture? And how has that been working for you? How has that, whatever it's been working for those in your circle? Now, unfortunately, the Bible doesn't give us examples or lessons on how to avoid those big picture scenarios. People being people and the world being the world, perhaps changing the big picture is impossible. Jesus seemed to know that there was an inevitability about where his road was leading. But I do think that even as the arc of history bends its way, we can see in our historic stories the kinds of opportunities that Jesus' friends and followers had to make different choices, even if we don't see what they would have done with them. And we see Jesus issuing invitation after invitation for people to pivot out of their habitual responses, knowing and trying to teach that small changes are the ways that the big picture finally shifts. Because it is pretty much only in liminal times when change is truly possible. It's only during these times of disruption that you are motivated to do anything different. And that's what we've been trying to be attentive to over these last 6 weeks or so, I think. The habits and the worldviews that determine how we take in the information about the world and the choices that we make in these challenging and liminal times in our world. So weeks ago now, we noted that some of us, the Enneagram calls them 2s, 3s, and 4s, have an initial response to the world of, what do I feel? How do I feel about that? To whatever is happening around us. 5s, 6s, and 7s always begin with, what do I think about this? And 8s, 9s, and 1s start with, what am I going to do about this? Have you been paying attention to that pattern in your life these weeks? Or perhaps what you have noticed over these weeks is that there is one of those responses that you just don't pay attention to at all. 4, 5s, and 9s, for example, repress that doing question. They don't ask themselves what I'm going to do about it, because they aren't really comfortable connecting with the world. And it's not that they don't do anything. The problem is that they often don't do what needs to be done. 3s and 7s and 8s have this unconscious desire to reshape people and situations without the feelings. It's not that they don't have feelings and emotions, but they do like to avoid them when they can. And when they can't express their feelings, they kind of do it indirectly. And 1s, 2s, and 6s repress the thinking. It's not that they don't think. Of course they think. They would tell you they think all the time. The question is what they're thinking about. And they often think obsessively or think non-productively. It seems to me that our Holy Week stories do a good job of showing us what happens when we don't question our habits and patterns. I sometimes wonder, for example, if Peter was a 6. He kept trying to figure out Jesus, kept wondering what to think about all this. He'd get frustrated when Jesus would tell him he was thinking the wrong things or thinking about the wrong things. And then he found himself in a situation where, because he was scared, because he was worried, he even denied knowing Jesus at all. As a 3 on that big diagram behind me, I find that the ones I relate to the most are Judas and Pilate. Great. Neither of them are particularly good role models, are they? But they show me what happens when my habits are the things that define my actions. Pilate was too worried about his reputation and how it would be affected. So when Jesus was standing in front of him, he washed his hands of the situation so it didn't get on him, instead of doing the right thing in the moment. But he could see. Why do you think he washed his hands? He knew what was happening wasn't right. And Judas was so focused on getting to the goal of changing the world that he convinced himself that the ends would justify the means. Neither of them noticed how what they did would make those around them feel. I wonder sometimes about those followers who went and got the colt for Jesus to ride. They were pretty good at doing what they were told. What do we say if somebody says why we want this? Tell them your master needs it. Okay, our master needs it. They were pretty good at responding to whatever they were told to do, what was right in front of them. But do you think they had a sense of the bigger picture at all, of the threshold upon which they were crossing? Or were they just going through the motions? When Jesus was no longer there to tell them what to do you think they were able to sort it out? Or did they simply feel lost, ready to attach themselves to the next popular opinion in the crowd, the next person who would tell them what to do? The popular opinion that say, get rid of this Jesus guy, he's no good. Our world is still full of people who are glad to have fans and followers, and those fans and followers have a habit of being just as fickle. Turns out we are the only ones who can expand our worldviews and attend to our choices. We are the only ones who can bring our thinking and our feeling and our doing into a balance. We are the only ones who can uncover the motives that lie behind our habits and our patterns. But in these stories of Jesus' last days, with all their contradictions and their confusion, I can't help but also notice the ways that Jesus keeps opening the door for people to recognize their habits, opening the door for people to find transformation. Helps me understand what Thich Nhat Hanh said. He said, when our hearts are small, our understanding and our compassion are limited, and we suffer. We can't accept or tolerate others and their shortcomings, and we demand that they change. But when our hearts expand, these same things don't make us suffer anymore, because we have a lot of understanding and compassion and can embrace others. We accept others as they are, and then they have a chance to transform. It's when we actually stop trying to change people and love them as they are that they have a shot at transformation. This is what we see Jesus doing over and over and over again in these final days. It's how he acts with his friends, it's how he acts with his followers, and even his rivals and his enemies. What Jesus' followers learned, oh so slowly, was that when they felt accepted as they were, they could step out of their comfort zones to think productively or act intentionally or feel deeply. We are still learning this ourselves, oh so slowly. The Enneagram is but one tool to help us with this, as we follow Jesus' example to lift the burdens of anger and fear and shame, to make choices that contribute peace and goodness to a world that frankly is in need of both. We've been saying all Lent, it takes all kinds of kinds, and each kind has a part to add. We are those kinds of kinds. And so may God be with us all as we discern what our particular part will be in God's big story. Amen.